It started with a sound you almost didn't hear, the faint vibration of your phone in the dark. No notification, no name, just a single line that changed the temperature of the room. You deserve to know the truth. The words glowed cold against your screen, unfamiliar yet intimate, like a whisper from a version of reality you weren't supposed to access. You stare at it longer than you should. Every letter feels alive, breathing something ancient and poisonous. You read it again and again, because something inside you already knows. This isn't a prank, it's a confession. The air feels heavier now. You can almost hear your heartbeat echoing through walls that suddenly seem thinner. You replay every conversation from the past months, the laughter that ended too abruptly, the silence that fell when you entered the room, the way certain eyes refused to meet yours. You remember how they once spoke your name with warmth, and now it burns like acid in your mind. It's not paranoia anymore. It's proof. Proof that something happened when you weren't looking, and everyone you trusted helped build it. Together, you scroll through old messages, photos, group chats, every digital trace of connection. Each word now looks staged, rehearsed, perfectly placed to disarm you. You feel the duality tearing through you, grief and rage, confusion and clarity. The people who once claimed to protect you were quietly mapping out your collapse. Their friendship was the performance, your downfall, the entertainment. You start to see it clearly now. The slow erosion of your confidence wasn't random. It was orchestrated, designed like an ancient ritual where you were both the offering and the lesson. You don't reply to the message. Not yet. You let it sit there like a loaded weapon, its silence more dangerous than any response. You start watching instead, not the way you used to, but the way a predator studies the forest that once hunted it. You move through conversations like a shadow, hearing every false tone, every carefully edited truth. And in that stillness, something shifts. The weakness they built their lies upon begins to harden. The fear they planted starts to transform. You no longer crave explanation. You crave understanding. The truth isn't what hurts anymore. What hurts is realizing how long you were asleep and how terrifying you'll be now that you're awake. It started with a sound you almost didn't hear, a faint vibration in the dark, somewhere between sleep and awakening. You reached for your phone out of habit, not urgency. Just another night, another message, another piece of digital noise in a life already flooded with it. But this one wasn't noise, it was quiet. Too quiet, 5 words, no name attached, no context. You deserve to know the truth. Something in your chest shifted. Not panic, not yet. Just that deep, ancient knowing that once truth calls your name. It never leaves you the same. You stared at the screen, feeling the light of it cut through the dark room like a blade. For a moment, the world felt smaller, your walls closer, your breath heavier, your mind replaying every voice, every glance, every laugh you'd trusted. Behind each memory, something darker waited. You didn't reply, you didn't delete it. You just let it sit there glowing, whispering something you'd refused to hear for too long. That loyalty was never mutual, and innocence is just a currency in other people's games. You began to remember things that once felt harmless. The way conversations stopped when you entered the room, the polite smiles that carried the taste of pity, the coincidences that now felt like choreography. You thought you were surrounded by friends, people who saw you, believed in you, loved you. But love, you realize, can be a disguise. It can smile while it disassembles you piece by piece until you start doubting your own reflection. And doubt is the perfect leash. You place the phone down, but the message doesn't stay there. It seeps into your mind like smoke. You feel watched, not by strangers, but by the very faces you once called safe. The ones who know your habits, your weaknesses, your silence. Every word you ever spoke to them now feels like evidence in the wrong hand. You don't panic. You observe. You listen to the air, the echoes of laughter that suddenly sound like confessions. There's no going back. The truth has entered you like a virus, invisible, irreversible, alive. You're not who you were before you read those words. Something has awakened, cold, steady, and precise. You don't know yet what they did behind your back, but you do know this: they should have buried the lie deeper, because now you're listening. You meet them in silence, the one who finally broke. Their eyes flicker with the kind of fear that doesn't come from guilt, but from recognition. They've seen what you've become since the last time they whispered your name in secret rooms. The air between you feels heavy, like truth itself is reluctant to leave their lips. When they finally speak, their voice trembles, not because of what they did, but because they know the moment it's said aloud, the mask of normalcy dies. They confess that it wasn't a mistake. It was coordinated, deliberate, rehearsed. Every rumor, every whisper, every carefully timed silence, they dismantled you piece by piece, not with knives or fists, but with stories. Stories designed to make others question your sanity while you still smiled at the people holding the matches. They tell you how they watched you unravel, how your quiet nature made you the perfect target. You weren't meant to break, you were meant to doubt. That was their strategy, not destruction, but distortion. They wanted you to question your own reflection until you no longer trusted it. And as they speak, something inside you doesn't rage, it steadies. You realize you were never paranoid, you were precise. You sensed the poison long before it reached your veins, but you called it loyalty. You confused manipulation for care. Their confession doesn't wound you, it clarifies you. Like fire clearing the fog from glass, you start to see the architecture of betrayal as something ancient, ritualistic almost. There was always a priest of fear, an altar of gossip, a sacrifice of innocence. And you were the offering, chosen not because you were weak, but because your light exposed what they couldn't face in themselves. The confessor talks faster now, desperate to empty themselves of guilt. But every word they give you is power returning home. You listen, calm, detached, letting the pieces align. It's not revenge you feel, it's resurrection. When they finish, you thank them, not for honesty, but for the weapon they unknowingly forged in your favor. You walk away lighter, colder, unrecognizable to the version of yourself they once manipulated. There's no closure, only awakening, the kind that doesn't need apologies or explanations. You don't need them to understand what they did. You only need them to remember what happens when silence learns how to speak. You start dissecting it the way a surgeon studies the aftermath of a wound. Calm, precise, and detached. No anger left, just clarity. Every conversation, every joke, every time they smiled at you while twisting the knife a little deeper, it all lines up now like a map of intent. You see how they built it, step by step, not with violence but with doubt. They didn't need to destroy your name, they only had to make you question it yourself. That's how betrayal works. It's not loud, it's quiet. It hides in kindness. It grows in the pauses between words, in the glances exchanged when they think you aren't watching. You trace the architecture of it, the planning, the alliances, the small cruelties disguised as care. It was never random. Someone initiated it, someone benefited, and the rest simply followed because fear is easier than loyalty. You realize they didn't want to replace you. They wanted to reduce you, to make you smaller, quieter, manageable, because your presence reminded them of what they lacked. Your strength exposed their insecurity. Your light made their shadows scream. So they gathered around each other, whispering, reshaping the narrative until the villain in their story looked exactly like you. But now the roles are reversed. You no longer react, you analyze. The same emotions they once used against you now serve as evidence. You study their patterns like ancient runes, every word, every silence, every shift in tone revealing what they fear most: exposure. They never wanted truth, they wanted control. And now, stripped of your trust, their power collapses. They built their identity around your blindness. You were the mirror that made them feel real. And when you finally saw them for what they were, the mirror cracked, and so did their reflection. You understand it now. Betrayal isn't about losing others. It's about meeting yourself in the ruins they left behind. You see how every cut shaped you, how every humiliation burned away your softness until only steel remained. You don't hate them. You study them. You learn. Because betrayal, when seen from above, is revelation. It shows who fears you, who envies you, and who quietly worships the power you didn't know you had. And as you breathe in the silence they created, you realize something ancient: they never broke you, they forged you. You stop reacting. That's the first move. Silence becomes your new language, colder than any words they ever used against you. You start to speak through absence, through what you no longer give them. Every unanswered text, every delayed glance, every calm that replaces the chaos they once triggered, it all confuses them. They think you're broken again, fragile, ready to be shaped. But you're not the same. You've learned the most ancient rule of survival: the quietest ones pull the deepest strings. You begin to mirror the way they studied you: patient, unseen, analytical. You observe from the shadows they once banished you to. Their laughter now sounds rehearsed, their confidence brittle. You see it, the cracks beneath their charm, the small tremors of fear when they sense your awareness. You've become what they never expected: untouchable. They used to feed on your reactions, on the small flickers of pain that escaped your eyes. Now you offer them nothing. Your silence starves them, and in starvation, truth begins to show. They start turning on each other, quietly at first. You can sense it, the tension, the paranoia spreading like ink in water. The ones who used to whisper about you now whisper about each other. Their guilt stains everything they touch. You watch without pleasure, without hatred. You've moved beyond emotion into strategy, into something older, something colder. Like a storm gathering behind glass, you know what's coming, and you don't need to lift a finger. Each move you make is subtle: a nod in the right room, a withheld smile, a carefully timed piece of truth slipped into the right ear. You're not fighting them, you're letting them destroy themselves with the weapons they built for you. You've become the reflection they can't stand to face, the living reminder that manipulation loses its power when the target stops reacting. You've inverted the system. You've rewritten the rules. And though they still pretend, you see the shift. They speak softly around you now, unsure which version of you they're dealing with: the old one who doubted, or the new one who observed. But you don't clarify, you let them guess. You let the silence stretch until it becomes unbearable. Because now every second you stay quiet is a blade against their conscience. They built the cage, but you learned how to vanish from inside it. You don't speak. You don't need to. The moment is set like a trap hidden in stillness. Every word they whispered behind your back now hangs in the air, unguarded, trembling, waiting for gravity to do what justice never could. You crafted this night with precision. One message sent, one truth released into the bloodstream of their lies. You don't push, you don't beg. You simply watch the architecture of deceit collapse under its own weight. The silence becomes your ally, and it roars louder than accusation ever could. For so long they believed you blind. They moved like shadows in familiar rooms, trading your name for validation, your absence for control. But tonight their reflection turns against them. Every manipulation they wove becomes visible, like veins glowing under dark light. You don't raise your voice, you raise the mirror. You let them see themselves as you saw them: the trembling hands, the falsified smiles, the eyes that could never meet truth without flinching. The beauty of it is in its simplicity. You do nothing, and yet everything begins to break. It starts subtly: a pause too long, a glance that lingers where it shouldn't. Paranoia blooms. They start questioning each other, retracing every lie, wondering who cracked first. You've seen this before in history, in myth, when false gods lose worshippers and kingdoms turn to dust. Betrayal has always been a fire that eats from the inside, and now it consumes them in silence. You walk through the ashes they left in your name, untouched, untrembling, aware that power never needed to be taken, only remembered. The truth doesn't scream when it returns. It whispers through the gaps of their broken alliances, reshaping what they thought untouchable. You see it in their eyes, the dawning realization that you knew, that you saw, that you waited. This is not revenge, it's revelation, a balance restored by patience sharper than rage. You became the quiet storm they never predicted, the calm that ends empires. And as the last mask falls, you don't celebrate, you simply breathe. The same silence that once punished you now protects you. You've learned that exposure doesn't require violence. It only requires truth to be timed perfectly. You've become the mirror they feared, the one that doesn't lie, doesn't forgive, doesn't forget. In their ruin, you find peace. In your stillness, they finally see. You meet them again, but this time the air feels different. Their eyes don't hold guilt anymore, only calculation. The same person who shattered the circle's silence now sits across from you, confessing not out of remorse but self-preservation. They speak softly, like someone feeding poison through sugar. Every word drips with intention. They weren't trying to save you. They were trying to save themselves. The truth you thought was liberation was only a diversion, a chess move to redirect the blade. You realize it wasn't empathy that made them speak. It was fear. Fear of the storm you were becoming. As they talk, your pulse doesn't race, it slows. You start noticing the pauses, the careful edits in their version of events. They confess only what benefits them. They leave out what binds them to the others. In their voice, you hear the tremor of someone who knows their mask is slipping. They confess, yes, but not to cleanse, to calculate, to control the narrative before you do. And in that moment, you stop listening to their words and start reading the spaces between them. You see the hidden architecture of deceit, an empire built on shifting guilt like currency. It hits you then the betrayal was never personal. You were just the stage where their fear performed. Every whisper, every lie, every alliance, they weren't trying to destroy you. They were trying to maintain their illusion of power. You were the threat because you saw too much, felt too deeply, questioned what others accepted. That made you dangerous, and danger is what liars fear most. You finally understand. They weren't protecting you from the truth. They were protecting themselves from your awakening. Now, as they look at you, expecting forgiveness or fury, you give them neither. You give them silence, a silence so sharp it cuts through the theater they built. You let them keep talking, digging deeper into the hole they made. The more they explain, the clearer it becomes confession isn't redemption, it's strategy. And the moment you see that, something ancient stirs inside you. You no longer crave revenge, you crave clarity. Power no longer means control, it means awareness. And awareness is irreversible. You stand leaving them mid-sentence. You don't need their truth anymore. You carry your own now, heavier, purer, forged in betrayal. Behind you, their voice fades, small against the weight of what you've become. You've outgrown their lies. You've outgrown the game. You no longer speak their language, the one made of apology, explanation, and fear. You've learned that silence can slice deeper than confrontation ever could. They wait for your reaction, like vultures circling an animal that's already learned how to play dead. But you don't react. You let them choke on their own speculation. Every question they whisper in your absence becomes its own form of punishment. Because now, you understand. The power they once stole wasn't taken. It was handed to them every time you explained yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop feeding the fire. You withdraw your energy from the performance they built around you. The same people who mocked your quiet now tremble in it. Your silence echoes louder than their words ever could. They can't study you anymore because you've become unreadable. You've erased your patterns, rewritten your presence. They watch you rebuild without their permission and realize they can't predict the ending this time. What they created was a ghost of you, obedient, desperate, small. What stands before them now is the original version, unfiltered, unbroken, and finally untouchable. You begin to see betrayal differently. It's not cruelty, it's revelation. It exposes where your boundaries were too soft, where your loyalty was mistaken for weakness. You start wearing your detachment like armor forged in silence. The old you used to beg for closure. The new you creates it by walking away. Their chaos doesn't reach you anymore. You've become a mirror, one they can no longer manipulate without confronting their own reflection. That's what terrifies them most. The realization that they never destroyed you. They refined you. Now your stillness becomes movement. Your absence becomes presence. You stop reacting and start observing from a higher ground. You see their alliances fracture. Their confidence rot from within. They call it karma. You call it balance. Because when truth finally sits down, lies no longer have a chair. You walk through the ruins they left behind without bitterness, without triumph, just understanding. You've seen how easily masks melt under pressure. You've learned that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who no longer seeks to be understood. You don't chase, you don't expose, you don't return. You rise. And in the quiet that follows, there's an ancient sound, recognition. Not from them, but from something older, buried within you. The part that remembers what power really feels like: peace.